First, there was the darkness, heavy, thick, pressing against my eyelids. Then, the sound, a rhythmic, annoying beep, beep, beep that seemed to drill directly into my skull. And finally, the pain. A dull, throbbing ache behind my eyes, a sharp sting in my left arm, and a general feeling that my body had been put through a meat grinder. I opened my eyes. The light was blinding, pure, sterile white. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog. "Alice?" The voice was deep, smooth, and filled with frantic relief. I turned my head slowly. A man was sitting in the chair next to my bed. He was handsome, dark hair, square jaw, eyes the color of polished mahogany. He was leaning forward, clutching my hand like it was a lifeline. "Alice? Can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it was filled with sand. I coughed, a dry, hacking sound. The man was instantly on his feet. He poured a cup of water from a plastic pitcher and held the straw to my lips. "Slowly," he murmured, "just a sip." The water was cool and sweet. I drank greedily, then fell back against the pillows, exhausted. I looked at him again. He was staring at me with such intensity, such raw emotion, that I felt like I should look away. "Who?" My voice was a croak. I tried again. "Who are you?" The man flinched. It was a small movement, a tightening of the corners of his eyes, but I saw it. He let out a shaky breath and squeezed my hand tighter. "I'm Mark," he said gently. "I'm your husband." Husband! The word floated in the air, heavy and meaningless. I looked at him. I searched his face for something. A spark of recognition, a memory, a feeling. Nothing. He was a stranger, a handsome, worried stranger holding my hand. I don't remember," I whispered. Tears pricked my eyes. Panic, cold and sharp, started to rise in my chest. "I don't remember anything. Why don't I remember?" "It's okay," Mark said soothingly, stroking my hair. "The doctor said this might happen. You were in an accident, a car crash. You hit your head pretty hard. It's called retrograde amnesia. It might be temporary." "A crash?" I touched my forehead. There was a bandage there. "Yes. You were driving home. It was raining. You swerved to avoid a deer. You hit a tree." His voice cracked. "God, Alice, when the police called me, I thought I'd lost you." He buried his face in my hand, his shoulders shaking. I watched him, feeling a strange detachment. This man loved me. He was terrified of losing me. And I didn't know him at all. "How long have we been married?" I asked. He looked up, his eyes wet. 5 years. The best 5 years of my life. 5 years. I tried to look back, tried to find 5 years ago. I remembered college. I remembered my dorm room. I remembered my roommate Sarah complaining about her boyfriend. I remembered graduation day, the sun hot on my black gown. And then, nothing. A black void. "What year is it?" I asked. "It's 2025, Mark said. My breath hitched. The last thing I remembered was 2020. 5 years, I whispered. "I've lost 5 years." "We'll get them back," Mark promised fiercely. "I'll help you. I have photos, videos. I'll tell you everything. We'll rebuild it all, Alice. I promise." The doctor came in then. Dr. Harris, a kind-faced woman with grey hair. She checked my vitals, shone a light in my eyes, and asked me questions I couldn't answer. "What is your address?" "I don't know." "Where do you work?" "I don't know." "What is your mother's name?" "Diane." "Yes, Diane. Is she here?" "Your mother passed away 3 years ago, Alice," Mark said softly. "Cancer." The grief hit me like a physical blow, fresh and old at the same time. I cried then, really cried, for the mother I didn't remember losing. Mark held me, rocking me back and forth, murmuring comfort into my ear. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale coffee. It wasn't a familiar smell. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Mark never left my side. He slept in the uncomfortable chair. He fed me jello. He told me stories. "We met at a bookstore," he said, smiling at the memory. "You were looking for Jane Austen. I reached for the same copy of Persuasion. Classic meet cute? We live in a house in the woods," he told me later. "Up north. It's quiet. Just us. You love it there. You paint. You have a studio overlooking the lake. I paint? I asked, surprised. I had studied accounting in college. I had never painted in my life. You started a few years ago, he said. You're talented. It helps with your anxiety. I have anxiety. Since your mom died, he said smoothly. You prefer to stay home. Crowds overwhelm you. That's why we moved to the cabin, to give you peace. It all sounded plausible, sad but plausible. A grieving daughter retreating from the world, finding solace in art and a loving husband. On the 4th day, I was discharged. Mark drove a black SUV. He helped me into the passenger seat like I was made of glass. Ready to go home? He asked. I guess, I said, looking out the window. The drive was long. We left the city, then the suburbs. The buildings gave way to trees, dense, tall pines that pressed close to the road. We drove for hours. The road turned from asphalt to gravel. It's really isolated, I murmured. That's how we like it, Mark said, squeezing my knee. Our own little world. Finally the house appeared. It was beautiful. A modern A-frame made of dark wood and glass, nestled on the edge of a small, glassy lake. It looked like something from a magazine. This is it, Mark said. Home. He carried my bag inside. The interior was warm, filled with leather furniture and fluffy rugs. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. I asked Mrs. Higgins to come turn the heat on before we arrived, Mark explained. She cleans for us once a week. He led me to the living room. Look, he said, pointing to the mantelpiece. There were photos, dozens of them. Me and Mark on a beach laughing, me and Mark hiking, me and Mark cutting a wedding cake. I walked over to the wedding photo. I looked happy, radiant even. I was wearing a simple white dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Mark was looking at me with that same intense adoration he had in the hospital. We eloped, Mark said, coming up behind me. He wrapped his arms around my waist. Just us, in Hawaii. I touched the glass. It was undeniable proof. We were married. We were happy. Why don't I remember loving you? I whispered. You will, he said, kissing my neck. It's still in there, Alice. Deep down. The heart remembers what the mind forgets. The first week was a haze of recovery. Mark was the perfect nurse. He cooked gourmet meals. He brought me tea. He managed my medication. These are for the headaches, he said, handing me 2 blue pills. And these are for the anxiety. Dr. Aris prescribed them. I took them obediently. They made me sleepy, floaty. I spent my days wandering the house. It was filled with me. My clothes in the closet, mostly comfortable knits and leggings. My books on the shelves. My paintings in the studio. The paintings were disturbing. The studio was a sunroom at the back of the house. Canvases were stacked against the walls. I pulled one out. It was a landscape, the lake outside. But the colors were wrong. The water was black. The trees were jagged like teeth. In the center of the lake, there was a tiny figure drowning. I pulled out another, a portrait of a man. Mark. But his eyes were missing, just black holes. I shivered. You went through a dark phase, Mark said from the doorway. I jumped. I hadn't heard him approach. These are scary, I said. Art is therapy, he said, taking the canvas from me and turning it around. You were working through your grief. Your mother's death hit you hard, Alice. Harder than you realized. I want to stop taking the pills, I said suddenly. They make me feel fuzzy. Maybe if my head clears, I'll remember more. Mark's expression tightened. Alice, honey, you need them. Dr. Aris said the brain swelling needs time to go down. If you stop now, you could have a seizure or a relapse. Trust me, I'm taking care of you. Okay, I said, shrinking back. I'm sorry. It's okay, he said, smoothing my hair. You're just confused. Let's go make dinner. But that night, I didn't swallow the blue pills. I tucked them under my tongue, waited until Mark turned off the light, and then spit them into a tissue. I wanted to wake up. The next morning, I felt different, sharper. The fog was thinner. Mark went outside to chop wood. I watched him from the window. He was strong, methodical. The axe rose and fell with terrifying precision. I decided to explore. I went to the front door. Locked. I tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. I looked for a key. There wasn't one in the lock or on the hook nearby. Strange. Why would we lock ourselves in during the day? I tried the back door. Locked. I went to the windows. They were large panes of glass, but they didn't open. Only small transoms at the top, too high to reach. Panic fluttered in my chest. Why am I locked in? I went to the kitchen. I searched the drawers. I found a junk drawer. Rubber bands, batteries, a screwdriver, and a phone, an old iPhone. Screen cracked. I pressed the power button. Dead. I looked for a charger. I found one plugged into the wall behind the toaster. I plugged the phone in. While it charged, I went back to the window. Mark was still chopping wood. He wasn't looking at the house. The phone chimed. It was on. I swiped the screen. Passcode? I tried 1234. No. I tried my birthday? No. I tried Mark's birthday, which I had learned from a calendar on the wall. No. I stared at the screen, the background photo. It wasn't me and Mark. It was me, younger, sitting in a dorm room with Sarah and a guy with blonde hair and a goofy smile. He had his arm around me. I was laughing, looking at him with pure love. I stared at the guy. Flash. A memory hit me like a lightning bolt. Popcorn. A movie theater. His hand in mine. I love you, Alice. His name? Ben. Ben? Not Mark. Ben was my boyfriend. We were engaged. I gasped, dropping the phone on the counter. Flash. A rainy night. Walking to my car after work. Footsteps behind me. A hand over my mouth. A needle in my neck. Darkness. Waking up in a basement. A man standing over me. Mark. You're safe now, Alice. You're home. Let me go. Who are you? I'm the man who loves you. The man who saved you. The memory was jagged, terrifying. I wasn't in an accident last week. I was kidnapped 5 years ago. Mark wasn't my husband. He was my captor. The accident, the car crash, Flash, running through the woods, rain, Mark chasing me. Alice, stop! Reaching the road, a car headlights, waving my arms, the car swerving, hitting a tree, me running to the car, trying to get help, Mark catching up, hitting me on the head with a rock. You stupid girl, why did you run? He staged the accident. He knocked me out. He brought me to the hospital and told them a lie. And because I had amnesia from the blow to the head, I believed him. Oh my God. I looked out the window. Mark had stopped chopping wood. He was looking at the house, looking at me. He smiled and waved. He started walking toward the back door. I grabbed the phone. I pulled the charger out. I shoved the phone into my pocket. I had to hide. I had to think. I heard the key turn in the lock. Alice? Mark called out cheerfully. I'm coming in to make lunch. I shoved the phone deeper into my pocket and forced myself to breathe. The cracked screen dug into my hip bone, a hard reminder that I wasn't dreaming. Alice? Mark's voice drifted through the house. Where are you, sweetheart? I stepped into the hallway, trying to look normal, trying to look like a confused amnesiac wife, not a woman who had just remembered she was a prisoner. I'm here, I called back, my voice shakier than I intended. Just looking at the paintings again. Mark appeared at the end of the hall, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His smile was warm, but now I saw something else underneath it, something possessive. You okay? You look pale. Headache, I lied, touching my temple. Maybe I need to lie down. He frowned, concern etching lines around his eyes. Did you take your pills this morning? Yes. I lied again. He studied me for a moment too long. Then he nodded. Okay, go rest. I'll bring you soup. I went to the bedroom, our bedroom, and closed the door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled the phone from my pocket and sat on the edge of the bed. No signal. Of course not. We were in the middle of nowhere. I tried the passcode again. This time, I typed in what felt right. 0724, Ben's birthday, July 24th. The phone unlocked. My breath caught. The screen lit up with a dozen missed calls and unread texts, all from 5 years ago, all from Ben. Ben, July 10th, 2020, 8:47 p.m. Where are you? You said you'd be home an hour ago. Call me. Ben, July 10th, 2020, 9:32 p.m. Alice, I'm getting worried. Your boss said you left work at 6. Please call me. Ben, July 10th, 2020, 10:15 p.m. I'm calling the police. Ben, July 11th, 2020, 3:22 a.m. They found your car. Your purse was still inside. Where are you? Please be alive. Please. Ben, July 15th, 2020. The police think you're dead. They found blood. I don't believe them. I'll never stop looking. The text cut off after that. Tears blurred my vision. Ben thought I was dead. Everyone thought I was dead. And Mark? Mark had kept me here for 5 years. I scrolled through the phone's photo gallery. Pictures of me and Ben. Pictures of my mother, healthy and laughing. Pictures of my college friends. My real life. And then, buried deep in the camera roll, I found something else. A video. The timestamp was from 5 years ago. July 10th, 2020, 7:43 p.m. I pressed play. The screen showed a parking lot. My hand was shaking. I must have been holding the phone. The camera was angled low, like I was trying to hide it. My voice, younger and terrified, whispered, "If anyone finds this, his name is Mark Callahan. He's been following me for weeks. I see him everywhere. Outside my work, outside my apartment. I reported it to the police, but they said they couldn't do anything unless he threatened me. I'm scared. I'm going to my car now. If something happens..." The video jerked. There was a muffled scream. The phone clattered to the ground. The camera captured a blurry image of shoesmen's boots and then a hand reaching down. The video cut to black. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. Mark Callahan. He was my stalker. He had followed me, hunted me. And when the police wouldn't help, he took me. I heard footsteps in the hallway. I shoved the phone under the mattress and lay down quickly, pulling the blanket over myself. The door opened. "Alice?" Mark's voice was soft. "You awake?" I kept my eyes closed, my breathing slow and even. He stood there for a long moment. I could feel his eyes on me. Then he walked closer. The bed dipped as he sat down beside me. His hand stroked my hair, gentle, loving. "I know you're starting to remember," he whispered. My blood turned to ice. "It's okay," he continued. "I expected this. The drugs were only ever a temporary solution. But it doesn't matter, Alice. You're not leaving. You belong to me. You always have." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Sleep well, my love." He left, closing the door softly behind him. I waited until I heard him go downstairs. Then I sat up, heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. He knew. He knew I was remembering, and he didn't care. Because he believed I couldn't escape. I had to prove him wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to Mark move around the house. He was in the kitchen for a long time. I heard the clink of glass, the hiss of a stove. Around midnight, the house finally went silent. I waited another hour, counting my breaths, before I slipped out of bed. The floor was cold under my bare feet. I moved slowly, testing each board for creaks. I'd explored most of the house over the past week, but there was one place I hadn't been allowed to go, the basement. "That's just storage," Mark had said when I asked. "Old furniture, Christmas decorations. Nothing interesting." But earlier today, when I tried the door, it was locked. The only locked door in the house besides the exits. I crept down the hallway. The basement door was at the end beside the kitchen. I knelt in front of it and pulled a bobby pin from my hair. I'd seen this done in movies. How hard could it be? Very hard, it turned out. I fumbled with the lock for 10 agonizing minutes, my hands slick with sweat, before I finally felt something click. The door swung open. Stairs led down into darkness. I pulled out my phone. Ben's phone, and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the black, illuminating wooden steps that descended into a cement-walled basement. I took a breath and went down. The air was colder here, damp. It smelled like mildew and something else, something faintly metallic. At the bottom of the stairs, I swept the flashlight around. The basement was large, unfinished. There were boxes stacked along one wall, just like Mark had said. But in the center of the room was something he hadn't mentioned. A bed. A twin-size mattress on a metal frame. Thin blanket. Flat pillow. Beside it, a bucket. And bolted to the wall, a long metal chain with a cuff at the end. I felt bile rise in my throat. This was where he kept me. For how long? Months? Years? I walked closer, my legs shaking. The mattress was stained. The chain was long enough to reach a small folding table in the corner. On the table were books, old paperbacks with cracked spines, a notepad, pencils. I picked up the notepad. The pages were filled with handwriting. My handwriting. Day 83. He brought me soup again. He says if I eat, he'll let me have a shower. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. Day 120. I tried to pick the lock on the cuff. It didn't work. My wrist is bleeding. Day 200. He says we're married now. He showed me a certificate. It's fake. It has to be fake. But he believes it. He talks about our future, about children. I want to die. Day 400. I stopped counting days. It doesn't matter anymore. No one is coming. Ben thinks I'm dead. Mom thinks I'm dead. Maybe I am. I dropped the notepad, tears streaming down my face. I lived down here, in this cold, dark hole, for years. And then, what? How did I end up upstairs, in the bright, beautiful house, with no memory? I turned and saw another door at the far end of the basement. It was slightly ajar. I walked over and pushed it open. It was a workshop. Tools hung on pegboards, a workbench. And on the bench, rows and rows of small glass vials. I picked one up. The label was handwritten. Rohypnol, another, midazolam, another, scopolamine. All sedatives, memory-disrupting drugs. He had been dosing me, for years, keeping me compliant, keeping me confused, and recently he had upped the ante, given me something strong enough to wipe my memory entirely, to turn me into a blank slate he could reprogram. The car accident was just a story, a way to explain my amnesia to doctors, to make it official. I heard a creak from upstairs. I froze. Footsteps. Alice? Mark's voice, calm, curious. Alice, are you awake? I turned off the phone's flashlight and pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering. The footsteps moved through the house. The bedroom door opened. Silence, then louder. Alice, where are you? I heard him moving faster now, checking the bathroom, the studio. Then the basement door creaked. Alice! His voice floated down the stairs. Are you down there? I didn't breathe. The light at the top of the stairs flicked on. Mark descended slowly, each step deliberate. He reached the bottom and looked around. His eyes landed on the open workshop door. He sighed. I really hoped we wouldn't have to do this again, he said. He walked toward me. I pressed harder against the wall, but there was nowhere to go. He stopped in front of me and tilted his head, almost sad. You were doing so well, Alice. I thought we were making progress. You're insane, I whispered. He smiled. Maybe, but I'm the only one who truly loves you. Ben didn't love you. He let you walk to your car alone at night. He didn't protect you. I did. I saved you. You kidnapped me. I saved you, he repeated firmly, from a world that didn't appreciate you. And I've given you everything. A home, safety, love. You chained me in a basement. That was temporary, he said as though it were obvious. You were confused at first. You needed time to adjust. But then you started to understand. You were happy, until you tried to run. The memory crashed into me again, running through the woods, the rain, his hands grabbing me. You hit me, I said. You gave me brain damage. I had no choice, he said, his voice pained. You were going to ruin everything, but it's okay. We can start over. That's the beautiful thing about memory, Alice. It's flexible. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a syringe. My stomach dropped. No, I said, backing away. No, no, no. It won't hurt, he said gently. You'll just sleep, and when you wake up, we'll try again. This time, I'll be more careful. I'll make sure you don't find your old phone. I'll make sure you stay happy. He lunged. I grabbed the first thing I could reach, a wrench from the workbench, and swung. It connected with his shoulder. He grunted, stumbling back, the syringe clattering to the floor. I didn't wait. I ran, up the stairs, through the kitchen. I threw myself at the front door, locked. I spun around. Mark was at the top of the basement stairs, clutching his shoulder, his face twisted in fury. You can't leave, Alice, he shouted. There's nowhere to go. We're 20 miles from the nearest town. You'll die out there. I ran to the window. I grabbed a chair and hurled it at the glass. The window shattered. Cold night air rushed in. I didn't think. I climbed through, glass slicing my hands and feet, and dropped into the snow outside. Behind me, Mark roared. I ran into the woods. The cold was instantaneous and brutal. The moment my feet hit the snow, the shock seized my lungs. I was wearing flannel pajamas and no shoes. "Alice!" Mark's scream from the broken window was primal, a mix of rage and panic. I didn't look back. I ran. The woods were dense, a tangle of shadows and moonlight. Sharp branches whipped my face, slicing my skin. My bare feet went numb within seconds, then started to burn. "Keep moving. If you stop, you die." I had no direction, just away. Behind me, I heard the heavy crunch of boots on snow. He was coming. He had shoes, a coat, a flashlight. I had terror. "Alice, stop!" His voice echoed through the trees. "There's a storm coming. You'll freeze to death." I scrambled up a ridge, slipping on ice, clawing at roots with bleeding fingers. I reached the top and looked down. A road. A ribbon of asphalt, cutting through the white wilderness. Hope surged in my chest. I slid down the embankment, tearing my pajamas, bruising my ribs. I stumbled onto the road. It was empty, silent, no cars, no lights, just endless forest on both sides. I turned left and started to limp run. My feet were blocks of ice now. I couldn't feel my toes. Headlights. In the distance, a glow. I waved my arms, screaming, "Help! Help me!" The car approached slowly, a black SUV. My heart stopped. It was Mark's car. He hadn't chased me on foot. He had doubled back to the garage and driven around to cut me off. The SUV stopped 10 feet away. The door opened. Mark stepped out. He was wearing a heavy parka and holding a blanket. He looked disappointed. "Get in the car, Alice," he said, his voice flat. "No," I whispered, backing away. "I'd rather freeze." "Don't be dramatic. You're hypothermic. You're shaking." He walked toward me. "Look at you. You're hurting yourself. I'm trying to protect you." "You stole 5 years of my life," I screamed, the sound raw in the freezing air. "You killed Dr. Peterson. You made everyone think I was dead." He stopped, his face hardened. "I did what was necessary," he said coldly. "Ben didn't deserve you. He was weak. I watched him, Alice. I watched him forget you. Within 6 months he was dating again. Within a year he moved to Chicago. He moved on. I never did. He thought I was dead because of you. Does it matter? The result is the same. You have no one but me." He lunged. I tried to run, but my frozen legs wouldn't cooperate. He tackled me into a snowbank. The cold burned my skin. He wrapped the blanket around me, not to warm me, but to bind my arms. "Shh," he murmured, lifting me like a child. "We're going home. We'll fix this. I have stronger medicine." I blacked out. I woke up in the basement. But it wasn't the basement I remembered. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow. There was a rug on the floor, a bookshelf filled with art supplies, a comfortable armchair, and bars on the door. My ankle was no longer chained. Instead, the heavy steel door was locked from the outside. There was a slot for food. I was in a cell, a decorated, comfortable cell. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty." Mark's voice came from a speaker in the ceiling. I looked up. A camera blinked in the corner. "I decided the chain was too barbaric," he said. "This is better. Your own private studio. You can paint all day. I'll bring you meals. We can talk through the door." "Let me go, Mark," I said, my voice hoarse. "No," he said simply. "We tried that. You ran. You broke the rules. Now we have new rules." Days turned into weeks. He brought me food. He talked to me for hours about his childhood, about philosophy, about how much he loved me. He was delusional. He truly believed we were living a difficult but necessary romance. I pretended to listen. I pretended to calm down. But I was watching. I watched the routine. Breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at 1 p.m., dinner at 7 p.m. He always opened the slot, slid the tray in, then closed it. But on Tuesday's Mrs. Higgins' cleaning day, he was distracted. He rushed. I started hoarding, not food, paint thinner, from the art supplies he graciously provided. It was turpentine, flammable. I soaked a rag in it. I hid it under the mattress. I waited for a Tuesday. "Mrs. Higgins is here," Mark said through the speaker. "I'll be quick with lunch." The slot opened. He slid a sandwich in. "Wait," I said, moving close to the door. "Mark, I don't feel well. I think the heater is broken. It's freezing in here." "It's set to 72, he said, annoyed. I checked. "Please," I begged, "just check the vent. I'm shivering." I heard him sigh. Fine, let me get the key. The lock clicked. The heavy door swung open. Mark stepped in, looking irritated. I was ready. I had the rag in one hand, and in the other, I had a lighter I'd found in the junk drawer box he had moved down here for me to sort through weeks ago. "Where is the—" he started. I flicked the lighter. The rag caught fire instantly. I threw it at the stack of canvases near the door. They were primed with oil paint. They went up like a torch. "Fire!" I screamed. "Fire!" Mark's eyes went wide. He grabbed a blanket to smother the flames. I ran past him. He lunged, grabbing my ankle. I kicked him in the face hard. He groaned and let go. I scrambled up the stairs. Smoke was filling the basement. I burst into the kitchen. "Mrs. Higgins!" I screamed. "Help! Fire!" An older woman was vacuuming the living room. She looked up, startled. "Alice?" she gasped. "Mr. Callahan said you were bedridden upstairs." "He kidnapped me!" I shouted, grabbing a knife from the counter. "Call 911! Run!" Mark burst out of the basement, his face blackened with soot, coughing. "Don't listen to her," he roared. "She's having an episode. She's dangerous." Mrs. Higgins looked from me, wild-eyed, holding a knife, to Mark, covered in soot, furious. She saw the smoke billowing from the basement. She dropped the vacuum and ran for the front door. Mark chased her. "Stop!" I didn't wait. I grabbed the keys to the SUV from the hook by the door. He had gotten sloppy and ran out the back. I jumped into the car, locked the doors. Mark appeared at the driver's side window, pounding on the glass. "Alice, open the door! You need me!" I looked him in the eye. I started the engine. I put it in reverse. He jumped back as I peeled out of the driveway. I drove. I drove until the house disappeared. I drove until the trees thinned out. I drove until I saw a police station. I walked inside, still clutching the knife, covered in soot and snow. "My name is Alice Moore," I told the officer at the desk. "I died 5 years ago, and I'd like to report a murder." Epilogue. The stranger in the mirror. Mark was arrested an hour later. Mrs. Higgins had made it to a neighbor's house and called the police too. They found the workshop, the drugs, the chain. The trial was sensational. The dollhouse kidnapping. Ben flew in from Chicago. When I saw him in the interrogation room, I thought I would feel relief, love, the rush of memory I had clung to in the dark. He walked in. He looked older, thinner. He had a wedding ring on his finger. "Alice?" he whispered, tears in his eyes. "My God!" He hugged me. I stood there stiff. I remembered loving him. I remembered the movie theater. I remembered the texts, but I didn't feel it. 5 years of trauma, of drugs, of Mark's voice rewriting my reality. It had changed me. The Alice who loved Ben was gone. She had died in that basement. "I'm married," Ben said softly, pulling away. "Her name is Jessica. We have a baby." "It's okay," I said, and it was. "I'm glad you're happy." I moved to a new city. I changed my name. I paint now. Real paintings. Dark, twisted landscapes that sell for thousands of dollars. Critics call them haunting. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I don't know where I am. I reach for Mark. Then I remember. He's in prison for life. But yesterday, a package arrived at my gallery. No return address. Inside was a single photo. It was me, sleeping in my new apartment, taken from the fire escape window. On the back, in handwriting that made my blood run cold, were 3 words. "I'm still watching." I called the prison. "Mark Callahan?" the warden said. "Ma'am, didn't you hear? There was a riot in the yard 3 days ago. Callahan escaped. He's gone." I looked at the photo. I looked at the window. I am Alice. I survived 5 years in hell, and I'm not running this time. I went to the closet and pulled out the gun I bought last week. "Come and get me, Mark." The end.